Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Zoom stock, and I am going to try not to zoom through my analysis because a lot of you in the comments say I talk too fast. So I'm going to try to slow it down and not zoom. Okay, let's get into the analysis. All right, Zoom stock is interesting to me. And it's interesting for me because this video is an ongoing playlist of the videos that I have, or the playlist I have on this channel called Why Does Cathie Wood Own? I thought that was an interesting name for the playlist. So the idea is I want to analyze some of the biggest high conviction stocks that she has and really talk about why she has those convictions in them. Now, Cathie Wood, obviously with the ARK Innovation ETF, she doubles down on her conviction. So when she sees stocks that are down 60, 70% from their all-time highs, what she does is she just buys more. Even though recently it was reported that $325 million was taken out of the fund, just in terms of investors selling off the shares and the ARK ETF. But she continues to buy Teladoc, buy Roku, buy Zoom, all these types of stocks. We've done some analyses on Roku, done some analyses on Robinhood. Today we're talking about Zoom, and we're talking about what is ARK's bull case? Why are they so bullish on a video conferencing app? So the first thing we have to understand is that Cathie Wood and her team see Zoom as attacking the $1.5 trillion enterprise communication space. I think it's called UC for short, so it's like unified communications. This is the communication space that not only big corporations are going to be able to use, so like companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all these companies that are going to need to integrate their communication stack so that all of the people working for them have this like system that is able to integrate in a meaningful way. I mean, that's a big market. But you also have freelancers. You also have regular people that are leaving their jobs, that are creating their own businesses, that have to use Zoom to communicate or use some type of video conferencing tool to communicate. And Cathie thinks Zoom can be the winner in that space. And, you know, I personally relate to this because I have my own consulting business. And a lot of time when I work with clients, and I've been working with clients really for the past couple of years, it's never been anything but Zoom. It's always been Zoom. The only time I remember it wasn't Zoom was back in 2018 when I was using like Google Meets or something, or Skype, or even FaceTime. I would use it sometimes, or just like a general phone call, because I didn't know Zoom existed, right? Like I didn't know Zoom was a thing. The pandemic happened, and then Zoom became this kind of like buzzword where everyone was like, oh, just like, let's get on Zoom, let's do this. I mean, I was having calls with my friends during quarantine in March 2020 through Zoom. Like we had never used Zoom before, but now Zoom was like our thing. And it became it was kind of this magic moment for Zoom in the midst of everything bad that was going on, which was that they were able to offer a unified communication system that people were actually liking, that people were able to use, that governments were able to use, that schools were able to use. And I know this because a lot of the schools that I worked with, they were able to use them, and that ultimately corporations were able to integrate seamlessly. And it was a good experience because it actually worked, and it wasn't crap. As a result, the stock price ballooned. I mean, we got to highs of like $500 for Zoom from like lows of $107 during the midst of the pandemic. And it was kind of like, okay, so, you know, the 500% gain in a couple of months, that's kind of insane. Obviously, it wasn't going to stay there as high as it was because things started to get a little bit more smoother in terms of the pandemic. People stopped using these devices as much because people were going outside. But now we're recognizing that there's a digital transformation happening in terms of how people work. And it's going to be remote. It's going to be hybrid. It's not going to be always back in person because our world has just changed. And if that thesis is correct, if that thesis stays true over the next 10, 20 years, then there's going to be some unified communication systems that are ultimately going to win that. And either it's going to be Microsoft Teams, either it's going to be Google Hangouts, either it's going to be like Apple's FaceTime, either it's going to be Cisco WebEx, or it's going to be Zoom, right? It's really between those. Maybe there's some other players, but at the end of the day, Cathie's betting on Zoom, and here's why. So a couple of stats they're big on. They say that the percent of knowledge workers working remotely will approach 51%, nearly double the 27% in 2019 over the next 5 years, which is pretty big because if all of these knowledge workers, which are basically like freelancers, are doing all this work, then they need a communication system to be able to integrate that. Tech Republic stated that Zoom's share of the global video conferencing market share was roughly 49%, above Google Meet's 22% and Microsoft Teams 15%, which are both formidable competitors. So even in the, and this was out in September 30th, 2021, even in the midst of about a year off the pandemic, you got Microsoft breathing down your neck. You got Google breathing down your neck. You have Apple FaceTime breathing down your neck. All of those services offering other things than just video communication, because that's pretty much all Zoom is. And Microsoft has like this integrated communication system with like messages and this workflow, so like organizations can partner with it together. Zoom is still maintaining its market share. And I think that's one of the biggest stats that is giving Cathie a lot of conviction that consumers are speaking with their wallets and they want Zoom over everything else. So they write, in our view and from our experience with the best audiovisual quality, a simple interface with little friction and robust customization settings, Zoom's user experience is superior to all other video conferencing services. So They think that Zoom is the clear winner when it comes to other video conferencing services. Moreover, as it continues to invest in offerings such as chat, phone, large events and webinars, and digitally connected conference rooms. This is the whole big market opportunity that people think over the next 10 years, which is that conferences, that these things that are like hundreds of millions of dollars to put on over 3 days are going to go through the internet, right? Because people just don't want to go to conferences anymore that much. Zoom might be a beneficiary of this. Zoom's quality and communications first strategy should help consolidate the enterprise communications market towards its platform, branch by enterprise branch. So they're making a bet, right? They're making a hypothesis. I have not bought Zoom because like I don't know if like this is correct. I mean, I want to believe it's correct, but I don't know if it's correct. Now I bought ARK KK, so I might as well buy Zoom, right? Because Zoom is like number 3 on their portfolio, so I kind of have to be convinced of Zoom if I'm buying ARK. But it's like Zoom, they're betting that Zoom's going to win the enterprise communication space, and by winning the enterprise communication space, they're going to become so embedded in the very fabric of how communications communicate with each other and with employees that then freelancers are going to be using it, and organizations are going to be using it, NGOs are going to be using it, conferences are going to be done through this, and conferences are already done through Zoom. I mean, there are some people like Tony Robbins, right, who this motivational speaker, he would sell out an arena in Miami for like 10,000 people over 5 days. I know this because my mom went to one of those events back in New Jersey. It was like an $800 ticket, and he would teach you how to walk over fire. And it's like, it's for people who are feeling really lost in life, that want to get more motivation, that want to understand what they're doing with their life. Those are what some of those conferences are for. He recently transitioned all of that over to Zoom. And so did some of the other motivational speakers that I know. And if you watch the behind the scenes videos, they're literally like staring at this big screen that has all these little boxes, and people don't even have to leave their home. They're able to get all the motivation and all the coaching and all the consulting that they want literally through their computer. It's a lot more of an enjoyable experience from an efficiency perspective. Now, you don't get to go and be there physically, which kind of sucks, but like, you're still getting all the content that you need, and you're probably able to pay a little bit more of a reduced price, or like a price that doesn't like dramatically hurt the revenues of these like motivational speakers, and you're able to get the value of the conference. And we've seen this in a lot of different events that have been happening through Zoom. If that's going to keep continuing, and Zoom is already dominating that market or being like the thing that creates that market, Google Meets is not doing that. Like FaceTime is not doing that. Microsoft Teams is for like corporations that have teams that work together, not like full-on conferences. Zoom is the place where that's happening. Then that's probably not going to stop. They write that global cloud-based unified communication system spending today is only $45 billion per year, which spreads across our estimate of approximately 1 billion knowledge workers, which amounts less to $4 per knowledge worker per month. If Zoom were to increase its market share from 8% of the current total expenditures to 15% of the total available UC market by 2026, its revenue and gross profits would both compound at an annualized rate of 61% to 50 billion and 35 billion respectively. If it were to optimize for profitability, then Zoom's operating margins could approximate 35% and its cash conversion 80%, delivering roughly $14 billion in free cash flows. Given a free cash flow yield of 5%, Zoom's enterprise value would nearly quadruple from approximately 76 billion today to 280 billion by 2026. Now, that's a lot of numbers, but at the end of the day, they're basically saying, look, if it gets 8% more of the market share from now to 15% to 2026, and they're able to make their operating margins a little bit more bigger, right? Not that much bigger, but they're able to cut some expenses here and there. They're able to make the process more efficient. Then they would be able to deliver about $14 billion in free cash flow, which would create the market capitalization of about $280 billion by 2026. Which would be a pretty fantastic return. Additionally, they say, given the superiority of cloud-based solutions that integrate video, voice, and chat, we would not be surprised to see monthly spending on unified communications increase at a compounded annual rate of more than 40% during the next 5 years. So that $4 per month over 1 billion knowledge workers that makes up the total addressable market for unified communication systems would be $25 per month, because the amount of people that would be using these systems would grow, and the utility or the value that you would get from those systems would require an enhanced fee, right? You would pay more for the subscription because it's more vital in your life. Like if I needed to pay more for Zoom, I would pay more for Zoom because like Zoom is vital in everything I do. They estimate that market's only growing and get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's their overall thesis. They believe that Zoom has the best product at the end of the day. And if they believe Zoom has the best product, and because that best product is transcending knowledge workers, conferences, and organizations or corporations that are able to use that product within their entire tech stack, then at that point, you know, what are you going to use outside of Zoom? Now, the counter argument here is that Microsoft Teams and all these other services are basically able to like offer more than what you have. So Slack is a good example, right? Slack is just this standalone messaging app, and it's spread like wildfire. And then all the corporations in the world are buying these Slack subscriptions. Salesforce acquired Slack for about $40 billion because Salesforce was getting ready to roll out its own product, and Microsoft had its own products. And like Slack ultimately couldn't compete because they didn't have any other product offerings within their messaging app, because it was just a messaging app, to compete with the big boys. So like the sale ultimately ended up making sense. There wasn't a market opportunity for them to exist on their own. There is a world in which I think that could happen to Zoom, because at the end of the day, if it's only audio video chat, even if it's the best quality audio video chat, it is plausible that a competitor swallows them up. Now, the difference between Zoom and Slack is that Slack is just a messaging, right? And like, it's a good experience, but it's just messaging. Zoom with video and audio quality, I think it's a little bit different of a value proposition. It's harder to replicate that type of experience. Like messaging, at the end of the day, it's just another version of email. It's just more quicker and faster, right? Like Discord is a better version of Slack, you could say. And like corporations theoretically could use Discord, right? Even though it's built for gamers and stuff, and there's like fun emojis, but like you could definitely see yourself as a corporation popping in a Discord because of how many people use Discord. It's hard to me to think a corporation would just switch to Microsoft Teams or switch to Google Meets or switch to FaceTime or switch to Cisco WebEx over Zoom, given the value proposition of the product and given the ease of use and frictionless user experience that the product that Zoom has actually provides. Like that to me is where I see them potentially going for the entire market and just being that unified communications enterprise level of product that no one else can definitively copy, versus getting acquired. Now, I think would they want to get acquired if the price was pretty big, and it would be in the multi billions of dollars, even hundreds of billions of dollars if they keep growing at the rate that they need to grow. Yes, that's very possible, right? And that probably would have happened to Slack as well. But I think what Cathie sees is something in Zoom that other people don't see, based upon the research that she's done around the macro level trends around people using unified communication systems and how Zoom is maintaining market share in a world in which these big competitors are breathing down their neck. So for them to hold 50% of the market roughly, even with everything happening, even post-pandemic, and for them to do $1.2 billion of revenue in Q2 of 2021, after doing only $620 million of revenue in 2020, for them to double the amount of revenue they did in 1 year in 1 quarter is pretty phenomenal stuff. It's definitely not dot-com bubble stuff. And it's also signaling that this is a product that people like, and it's a product that's able to stand on its own, even in the face of competitors, because the competitors can't replicate what this product brings to the table. So those are my thoughts on Zoom. Do you own Zoom? Are you interested in owning Zoom? Do you really think it's just this like glorified FaceTime application, or do you actually see some value and utility in it? Looking forward to reading all the comments. Looking forward to hearing what people think. My name is Amit. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.